Shalom, shalom. I welcome you all to my Sukkot, which I am speaking from right now on this Chag of Sukkot, Zman Simchatenu, the time of our joy and happiness. And of course, on Sukkot, we all go out into our temporarily constructed huts. It's right after the Yomim Naraim, the high holy days, where we spent introspecting, delving into the deeper parts of ourselves, and then we show that we have this utter reliance and dependence on God, and our reluctance to go back into our homes, the stability, the places where we've built for ourselves that house a lot of our past, but we want to kind of stay on this journey with God as long as we can, with the protection of God. And it's a more spiritual existence. It's a more lofty existence where we're outside, we can see the stars, we can sort of really feel God's presence still, as bringing it from us, with us, from the high holidays. And it's really beautiful. And as always, the Jewish people have a custom on Shabbat, on the Chagim, to invite guests into our homes. And we do this also, of course, in Sukkot, but we do it not just in a physical way with friends and family and other people, but we do it in a spiritual way also, of accessing every single night of the 7 nights of Sukkot one of the 7 shepherds of our ancestors. We invite them into our Sukkah to join us, and these people are Abraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov, Moshe, Aaron, Yosef, and David HaMelech. And it happened on the first night. I kind of had this feeling as we did the Ushpizim, and I invite Abraham Abinu into my tent, and I was talking about it and saying how with October 7th, how when I read the Parsha on Abraham, how he went when he heard that Lot was taken captive, and he dropped everything, took all of his students with him to fight the wars with the 4 kings and the 5 kings, and it was just a knee-jerk reaction to go save his brother. And my husband mentioned how our people were so much like that. You see so many countless stories of people that dropped everything, and despite the threat to their lives and everything else that it entailed, they ran to go help our brothers in need in this horrible October 7th. And I was thinking about kind of accessing something from each one of these 7 people each night, that there is something, when you're outside and you kind of feel time, past, present, and future, and everything kind of mesh into one. And I was thinking about trying to access something from each one of these 7 people each night that would connect to this situation, and kind of in the merit of that, like, have God successfully help us have our people return in safety, and to have peace and no more war, and a promising future. And so first with Abraham, it was very easy, that not just that we merit from his Sukkot of the things that he did, but the way that our people really stepped up to the plate. And then I was thinking about Yitzchak and the progression of the story of October 7th. And Yitzchak, who we know is very famous for Akedah Yitzchak, offering, when his father had to offer him up and thought he would have to give him as a sacrifice to God, and Yitzchak also putting his life on the line. How easy is that to understand how that connects, where so many fathers and mothers had to put their children in danger, went to war, went to battle, and some of them really did sacrifice their lives, and some always with the looming question of what if their sons and daughters, or as from Yitzchak's perspective himself, they themselves are putting their life on the line, al kiddush Hashem, to sanctify God's name for this war of protecting our people and our country and defeating the enemy. And I say on this merit and on this devotion that not just Abraham and Yitzchak had, but is displayed every single day in our people, that be a prayer to God to help us through, and to let everything fall in a way that unfold now in the most promising of ways. And then we go to Yaakov. Now, Yaakov, his story was really difficult. He had to run from his brother to flee his country where his father was, and he had to live in fear of his brother wanting to kill him. And that was an extraordinarily difficult thing, not to be able to live in his homeland because of a threat from the family member, much as we do, and we can't live in our country safely because of the threat in Gaza, and that's constantly looming. And the things that he did when he went back, of having to divide up his family camps and having to try and placate his brother and send gifts. This really feels like us in Israel, of our families being broken up because of this. And I think sending gifts, meaning all the supplies that we've been giving to our enemies, and every single thing really aligns with these difficulties that we've had in our past and how we're trying to deal with it. And then we go from Yaakov to Moshe. And Moshe, as we know, obviously, his mission was to go to Paro. He had diplomacy and try to work out, let my people go, again and again, with different acts of, all different tactics to try and get our people out, which our country's constantly been doing with our people. And then Aaron, which really breaks my heart, this part, because Aaron represents the brotherly love, the coming together, and we've had those Aaron moments when October 7th happened, of all our brothers coming together and uniting, and this beauty, these Aaron moments of beauty, of brothers really just putting down all their differences and loving each other. And why it breaks my heart is, if only we could just hold on to that, if we can re-access, if we can get back to that, all our hearts will be full. And then we go to Yosef. Now Yosef, this is where I want to stop and pause and speak a little slower, because on the first day of Sukkot, it was before this first day, Shabbos before, and I had a friend over, and I was walking her home, and I was thinking about Yosef, and I said, it's almost 2 years. It's almost 2 years. Yosef only had to wait 2 years. Yosef only had to be in prison for 2 years till God decided to let him go. That was the maximum amount, and that should be the maximum amount for our people. Why do I see a parallel? Because the whole reason Yosef was sold down and went into jail was because of the sinat chinam, the baseless hatred between brother and brother. And it's so clear to anyone who opens their eyes that we got into this horrible, devastating destruction and everything that ripped us apart on October 7th, because very, very strong sinat chinam that endangered us as a country and our very survival as human being. And if these people were taken captive based on our own inability to get along with one another, it shouldn't be more than 2 years. It can't be more than 2 years, is what I told my friend. Unbeknownst to me, that this deal would actually probably be going through, and the people, the Ezrat Hashem, will all be coming home, and our people alive, and the ones who've been murdered to be buried, that it's going to be exactly 2 years. It gave me chills down my spine when I realized how this was unfolding. And I feel like if we want that security back, let us learn from this lesson of Yosef and get along, and let it be a merit for our safety. And then we look to our future, which David Melech represents, where Melech HaMashiach is going to come from King David, and to close up the last night of Sukkot, inviting David HaMelech into our sukkah and sitting down and saying Tehillim, saying these words, these timeless words, and hoping for that clarity that should become near future of us understanding why everything had to unfold in the way it did, and having a greater understanding and a greater security, and a time where we can just live in peace the way we sit in the sukkah under the stars, under God's providence, that we should be able to walk all around every corner of our country in safety and in security, and that everybody who's passed, their name should be for a blessing, and there should be comfort and nachama to everybody who's suffered loss, to everybody who's suffering PTSD, physical, mental, emotional difficulties from October 7th, and from everything that ever has happened, and that we can just look to a bright future and build with those broken pieces something that's beautiful and everlasting. And I thank the Ushpizim for joining me in my Sukkot. And I pray to God, in the merit of all this, we can watch our people come home and start some form of healing, and that we can all, hopefully, God willing, build a bright future together. Chag Sameach.